The Valkyrie dreadnought Dominion's edge hung in Earth's orbit like a predatory bird, its kilometer-long hull bristling with weapons that could glass continents. Admiral Keck stood on the bridge, mandibles clicking with satisfaction as he gazed down at the blue-green world below. Another primitive world ripe for harvest, he chittered to his subordinates. Their radio emissions suggest they've barely mastered basic fusion. This should be simple. The transmission to Earth's surface was broadcast on every frequency, translated into the dominant languages by their scanning systems. Kex's image appeared on screens across the planet, a towering insectoid creature with compound eyes that gleamed like black diamonds. Inhabitants of the third planet, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I am Admiral Kex of the Valkyrie Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our workforce. You will be relocated to mining colonies and industrial centers where your labor will serve the greater good of our civilization. Resistance is futile. Compliance will be rewarded with adequate shelter and nutrition. The response from Earth came faster than expected. A graying human male appeared on the return transmission, wearing what their databases identified as a military uniform. His blue eyes held something that made Kex's antennae twitch with unease. This is General Harrison, speaking for the United Earth Defense Force. Your generous offer is rejected. We suggest you turn around and find someone else to enslave. Kex's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his species. You misunderstand your situation, primitive. We have conquered 47 worlds. Your resistance will last perhaps a day. Then you've never fought humans before, Harrison replied, his voice calm as stone. We've been at war with each other for thousands of years. We know how to fight. And we know how to die. The transmission cut. Kex turned to his weapons officer. Demonstrate our power. Destroy one of their coastal cities. The lance of superheated plasma carved through Earth's atmosphere, striking the evacuated city of Miami. The explosion was visible from orbit, a mushroom cloud that bloomed like a deadly flower. Surely now the humans would understand. Instead, every radar installation on the planet went active. Missile silos opened like awakening eyes. Ancient nuclear weapons, crude but numerous, began their slow climb toward space. Impossible, Kex whispered. They're launching everything they have. The bridge shuddered as the first primitive nuclear warhead detonated against their shields. Then another, and another. The humans were throwing everything at them, not trying to negotiate, not begging for mercy, but fighting with the desperate fury of cornered animals. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're detecting massive military mobilization across the planet. They're not surrendering. They're preparing for total war. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. Cosmic Whispers is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. Kex watched the tactical display as primitive. Aircraft rose from hidden bases, their pilots knowing they flew to certain death, but launching anyway. Ground-based weapons that shouldn't have been able to reach. Orbits somehow found their mark through sheer persistence and numbers. Deploy the fleet, he ordered. Full suppression protocol. But as the Valkyrie ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, they met not cowering civilians but a planet that had turned itself into a fortress. Every human seemed to have a weapon. Every building became a bunker. The species that had once fought 2 world wars with chemical weapons and bolt-action rifles now faced an alien invasion with nuclear fire and absolute determination. The conquest that should have taken hours stretched into days. The harvest that should have been simple became a bloodbath. And somewhere in the chaos, Kex began to realize that perhaps the Valkyrie had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not like the other species they had conquered. They were something else entirely. 3 months after the bombardment ceased, Earth lay in ruins. Cities smoldered under ash-gray skies, and the oceans ran red with debris. The Valkyrie had won, but at a cost that made Admiral Kex's victory taste like poison. Casualties? He asked, his egg not looking up from the damage reports. 67% of the invasion force, sir. The humans fought to the last shelter, the last ammunition cache, the last improvised weapon. We've never encountered resistance like this. Kex's compound eyes reflected the burning horizon. Of the 47 worlds they had conquered, none had cost them more than a few dozen casualties. These humans had made them bleed for every city block. And the survivors? Approximately 2 billion humans remain. They're compliant now, sir, mostly. The transport ships arrived like mechanical vultures, their cargo holds designed to carry livestock, not sentient beings. But the Valkyrie had learned not to underestimate human adaptability. Each prisoner was sedated, tagged, and assigned to different colonies across the Empire to prevent organized resistance. Marcus Webb found himself in the belly of a transport ship, surrounded by 1,000 other humans. The young engineer had lost his wife in the bombing of Chicago, his parents in the siege of Denver. Now he sat in the darkness, his hands zip-tied behind his back, listening to the quiet sobbing of children and the whispered prayers of the elderly. "Where do you think they're taking us?" asked the woman beside him, a teacher named Linda who had somehow survived the destruction of her school. "Mining colonies, most likely," Marcus replied, his voice hoarse. "They need workers, not soldiers. That's why they kept us alive." The journey took weeks. Each day, the Valkyrie guards would distribute nutrient paste and water, treating their human cargo like livestock. Those who showed signs of defiance were taken away and never returned. Those who seemed broken were given slightly better treatment. Marcus learned to look broken. He learned to keep his head down, to shuffle when he walked, to speak only when spoken to. But behind his downcast eyes, his engineer's mind was working constantly, cataloging everything he saw. The ship's artificial gravity was generated by rotating sections. The lights operated on a 26-hour cycle. The guards carried energy, weapons that required exotic crystal power sources. Every detail was filed away in his memory, waiting for the right moment. When they finally reached their destination, a mining colony on a world called Kepler Station, Marcus was assigned to the deep extraction crews. The work was backbreaking, 12-hour shifts in claustrophobic tunnels, harvesting rare minerals that powered Valkyrie technology. But the aliens had made another mistake. They had assumed that human intelligence was limited to simple tool use. They didn't understand that humans were natural problem solvers, that every challenge only made them more determined to find a solution. In the darkness of the mines, Marcus began to build something. Not a weapon that would have been discovered immediately. Instead, he built a network. Using the mining equipment's basic communication systems, he established contact with other human work crews. Slowly, carefully, he began to spread a message. "Remember who you are. We are not slaves. We are humans." The Valkyrie had conquered Earth, but they had made a fundamental error. They had assumed that breaking human bodies would break human spirits. They had never encountered a species that grew stronger under pressure, that turned suffering into fuel for revolution. In the depths of alien minds, under the watchful eyes of their captors, humanity began to plan its revenge. 2 years had passed since the fall of Earth. The Valkyrie Empire had distributed their human assets across 12 different worlds, confident that geographic separation would prevent any coordinated resistance. They had underestimated human ingenuity. Marcus Webb had transformed from a broken prisoner into something far more dangerous, a human who understood alien technology. Working in the deep mines of Kepler Station, he had access to the very crystals that powered Valkyrie's civilization. More importantly, he had discovered that human hands were uniquely suited to the delicate work of crystal refinement. "The irony is beautiful," he whispered to his cellmate, a former military communications specialist named Jake. "They think they're using us as simple laborers, but we're learning how their entire technological base works." The mining crews had developed an elaborate system of communication using the mineral extraction equipment. A tap pattern on the walls, a specific sequence of work orders, even the arrangement of tools. Everything became part of a growing network that connected human workers across multiple facilities. Through this network, Marcus learned that similar awakenings were happening throughout the Valkyrie Empire. On Titan Base, a group of humans had figured out how to repurpose atmospheric processors. On New Cygnus, former NASA engineers were reverse engineering the artificial gravity systems. Each discovery was shared, refined, and improved upon. The Valkyrie guards noticed that human productivity was increasing, but they attributed it to proper training and discipline. They didn't realize that their slaves were conducting the most extensive intelligence operation in human history. Status report. Marcus coded into the wall during his shift. The rhythmic tapping disguised as routine maintenance. Responses came from across the facility. Weapon systems mapped. Guard rotation schedule confirmed. Transport ship designs acquired. Crystal synthesis protocols understood. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a former MIT professor now working in the Valkyrie research facilities, had discovered something that changed everything. Hidden in her regular status update was a message that made Marcus's blood sing with possibility. Their technology is not magic, it's just science we haven't understood yet. And I think I know how to improve it. The humans had been studying their captor's technology for 2 years, but Elena had gone further. She had found the flaws, the inefficiencies, the design limitations that the Valkyrie had never bothered to address. More importantly, she had found ways to make their technology work better. The crystal matrices that powered their ships could be modified to produce 30% more energy. The force fields that protected their installations could be overloaded with specific frequency combinations. The communication systems that connected their empire could be hijacked and turned against them. My God, Marcus breathed as he decoded Elena's full report. We're not just going to escape. We're going to beat them at their own game. The network began to evolve from intelligence gathering to active preparation. Humans started accidentally damaging specific systems while perfectly maintaining others. Security protocols were memorized and shared. Guard patterns were documented with scientific precision. Most importantly, they began to build hidden in the depths of mining tunnels, tucked away in maintenance shafts, disguised as broken equipment. Humans began constructing the tools of their liberation. The Valkyrie had given them access to their most advanced technology, expecting them to use it for simple labor. Instead, humanity had turned every prison into a research facility, every work detail into a training exercise, every day of captivity into preparation for war. The slaves were becoming something their masters had never imagined, an enemy that understood their weaknesses better than they did themselves. The signal came on a Tuesday morning, Kepler station time. 3 years, 4 months, and 17 days after the fall of Earth, Marcus Webb received the message that would change the course of galactic history. The network is ready. All stations. Report go. Operation Prometheus begins at midnight. Across 12 worlds, spanning a volume of space larger than the entire solar system, 47,000 humans prepared to do something unprecedented in the history of the Valkyrie Empire. They were going to fight back. Marcus stood in mining shaft 7, supposedly performing routine maintenance on the crystal extraction equipment. In reality, he was making final adjustments to the weapon that would take down Kepler Station's defense grid. 3 years of careful modifications had turned a simple mining laser into something that could punch through military-grade armor. Status. Check, he whispered into his communicator, a device cobbled together from smuggled components. Titan base standing by, came Jake's voice from the orbital platform. Gravity well generator is ready to deploy. New Cygnus acknowledging, reported Dr. Vasquez. Viral weapon loaded into their communication network. Omega-7 operational, added Commander Sarah Chen, the former Navy pilot who had organized the resistance on the prison world. Fleet elements are in position. The plan was audacious in its scope and elegant in its simplicity. For 3 years, the humans had been preparing not just to escape, but to capture the very infrastructure that held them captive. They had identified every weakness, every blind spot, every critical system that kept the Valkyrie Empire functioning. At exactly midnight, standard galactic time, the universe changed. On Kepler Station, Marcus's modified mining laser carved through the central power distribution node, plunging half the facility into darkness. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as human work crews emerged from their quarters, no longer shambling like broken slaves but moving with military precision. On Titan base, Jake activated the gravity well generator, creating a localized space-time. distortion that trapped the Valkyrie patrol ships in a bubble of compressed gravity. Unable to maneuver, they became sitting targets for the humans who had spent 3 years learning to operate captured weapons. On New Cygnus, Dr. Vasquez's viral weapon propagated through the Valkyrie communication network, turning their own coordination system against them. Command frequencies filled with feedback loops and contradictory orders, creating chaos throughout their military hierarchy. But the most devastating blow came from Omega-7, where Commander Chun had done the impossible. Using captured Valkyrie ships that had been secretly repaired by human maintenance crews, she had assembled a fleet of 37 vessels, each one crewed by humans who had memorized every system, every weapon, every tactical advantage there. Former captors possessed, the Valkyrie response was swift but confused. Admiral Kex, now promoted to sector commander, found himself facing an enemy that seemed to know his every move before he made it. How is this possible? He demanded, his mandibles clicking with frustration as another of his ships fell to precise. Human fire. They're using our own technology against us. His intelligence officer brought him reports that defied belief. Human slaves had not only escaped, but had somehow acquired advanced military hardware. More disturbing, they seemed to understand Valkyrie tactical doctrine better than many Valkyrie officers. "Sir," the officer said, his voice trembling, "we're receiving surrender demands from the humans." Kex's compound eyes blazed with fury. "Surrender? They dare demand our surrender?" The transmission came through on his personal command frequency, a security breach that should have been impossible. Marcus Webb's face appeared on the screen, but this was not the broken slave that Kex remembered. This was a human transformed by purpose and righteous anger. "Admiral Kex," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of 3 years of careful planning. "This is your only warning. Surrender now, or face the consequences. You called us slaves. We called you mistaken." Behind him, the bridge of a captured Valkyrie dreadnought hummed with activity as human crews operated systems they had studied in secret for years. The former prisoners had become something their captors had never imagined, an enemy that understood them completely. The spark had been lit. Now came the inferno. The Battle of Proxima Centauri would be remembered as the moment when the Valkyrie Empire learned that humanity was not just another conquered species. It was the moment when former slaves became the liberators of the galaxy. Admiral Kex commanded a fleet of 200 vessels, the largest military force the Valkyrie had ever assembled. Against him stood 47 captured ships crewed by humans who had spent 3 years learning every weakness, every tactical limitation, every design flaw in Valkyrie military doctrine. "Impossible," Kex chittered as his tactical display showed. "The human formation. They're using the Korvuk spiral formation. That's a classified battle strategy." Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the captured dreadnought Liberation, wearing a uniform assembled from Valkyrie officer clothing. Around him, former prisoners operated weapon systems with the precision of trained military personnel. 3 years of forced labor had become 3 years of involuntary military education. "All vessels, execute Operation Righteous Fire," Marcus commanded. "Let's show them what happens when you underestimate the human spirit." The battle began. With a tactical move that stunned the Valkyrie fleet, instead of engaging in traditional ship-to-ship combat, the human fleet scattered into small groups, using the asteroid field around Proxima Centauri as cover. It was a strategy that no Valkyrie commander had ever encountered: asymmetric warfare in space. Kex's formation, designed for overwhelming firepower against organized resistance, found itself fighting ghosts. Human ships would emerge from behind. Asteroids delivered devastating strikes against vulnerable targets, then disappear back into the cosmic debris field. "They're not fighting like soldiers," Kex's tactical officer reported. "They're fighting like ... like insurgents." "Because that's exactly what we are," Marcus replied, monitoring the Valkyrie communication channels they had long ago learned to decrypt. "We're not trying to conquer territory. We're fighting for our freedom." The turning point came when Dr. Vasquez's modifications to the Valkyrie weapon systems proved their worth. The captured ships began firing with an accuracy and power that exceeded the original specifications. Human engineering had improved upon alien technology, creating weapons that were 30% more efficient and twice as reliable. "Sir," Jake reported from the weapons station, "their shields are collapsing. The frequency modulation is working." The Valkyrie had never encountered an enemy that understood their technology better than they did. Human crews had spent 3 years studying every system, every component, every line of code. They knew exactly how to overload Valkyrie shields, how to jam their sensors, how to turn their own weapons against them. One by one, Kex's ships began to fall. The mighty dreadnought Dominion's Edge, the same vessel that had first arrived at Earth, found itself crippled by precision strikes against its power distribution nodes, weaknesses that the human maintenance crews had mapped in excruciating detail. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender. Demands from 17 different human fleets." "Sir, they're everywhere. Every system, every colony, every prison world. The humans are rising up simultaneously." Kex's compound eyes reflected the burning wreckage of his fleet. In the space of 6 hours, the Valkyrie Empire had lost not just a battle but their entire infrastructure of oppression. The slaves had become masters of their own destiny. "This is Marcus Webb of the Free Human Coalition," came the transmission from the Liberation. "Admiral Kex, you have one chance to prevent the complete destruction of your forces. Surrender now, and we will show you the mercy you never showed us." For a moment, Kex considered fighting to the last ship. Then he looked at his tactical display and saw the truth. The humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had captured most of it intact. They were demonstrating a level of tactical sophistication that transformed them from former slaves into the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. "All vessels," Kex commanded, his voice heavy with the weight of species-wide humiliation, "stand down. Prepare for surrender." The great irony was not lost on Marcus as he watched the Valkyrie fleet power down its weapons. 3 years ago, these same ships had turned Earth into a burning wasteland. Now they were surrendering to the very humans they had tried to enslave. "Signal all human fleets," Marcus ordered. "The Valkyrie Empire has fallen. Humanity is free." Across the galaxy, on 12 worlds where humans had labored in chains, the news spread like wildfire. The species that had once conquered 47 worlds had been brought low by the determination, ingenuity, and unbreakable spirit of humanity. The slaves had burned their masters' armies to ash. And from those ashes, a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. The humans were no longer prisoners. They were the liberators, and the galaxy would never be the same.